I put together a sequence today that is based on yin yoga, a yin practice of yoga, which is not going to be very much of anything that we haven't maybe done a version of or a variation of before on a Thursday. But the theory behind the guiding kind of principle behind yin yoga is to create stress around the connective tissue of your joints. So tendons, ligaments, and fascia. So they are a deep stretch and a long hold, and you will undoubtedly want or need some supports, some props, just depending on your body and where, when you kind of fall into the pose where you feel most comfortable, the place where you feel most comfortable, that's where you're going to want to, have something to rest your head on, or to rest an arm on, or a bolster to put your hips on. So I have just a blanket on my mat and a blanket for my head, and my bolster, another rolled up blanket, and a block. Okay. So a yin practice, and all the yin poses are a lot of them named after animals. So, and they're all English names of in the English language, named after animals for the most part. So we're going to start in Shavasana and end in Shavasana. So let's go ahead and get comfortable on your back on the floor. Okay. I just have a little bit of support for my head. Okay. Meet you there. In about, roughly 3 minutes, 3-minute, 4-minute holds in each pose. And then we'll have enough time in between to come out and transition and then set up for the next pose. Okay. So start on your back. As we always do, take a moment here to settle to the floor, to feel yourself settling to the ground. Just give yourself several just intentional breaths. Notice anywhere in your body where you might still feel a little amped up, a little energized, a little restless even. Let's give yourself another minute here just to arrive, to fully feel yourself arriving. And so just another 2 or 3 breaths. Okay, and then just before we come up, bring your knees into your chest. Pull your knees, one knee under each hand, knees to chest, just to take a breath or two where you're just pressing the low back and the sacrum into the floor. And then drop your feet and shift your hips to one side. Come over onto your other side. Press yourself up from the ground. And what we'll do next, you might just based on any issues, if you have any issues in the discs or the vertebrae of your lumbar spine, right? And particularly if there's any issues toward herniation of the discs where the spine is compressed a little bit this way, the discs are herniated this way, this pose will be contraindicated. So you're going to want to kind of sit up against a wall so you have support against your back with the soles of your feet together and your knees wide. Okay, and you're holding and just letting the knees fall. And you want to feel some strain or some tension around the hip joints themselves. Okay, so we're not going to prop it. You're just going to sit up straight and hold yourself in I call it butterfly pose in the yin style. Okay, if you know you're okay in your back, you're going to bring the soles of your feet together, and they could be out a little bit away from your pelvis, maybe from where you normally have your feet close, maybe come out a little bit. You want the knees to be loose, you want the ankles to be loose, and then you're going to just let yourself kind of collapse and concave forward. You're going to let your head hang, let your chin come in. And we're going to be there for about 3 minutes. Okay, so wherever you land, wherever you end up having landed in the pose, maybe your head could rest on a block. You can just set the block right on your feet. Let your head rest. There, and then just as you're here, maybe after a minute, you can maybe bring it a little lower or adjust anything you need to. Let your breath be spacious and full. We're letting the weight of the upper body coming forward. We're letting that weight coming forward be the pressure that's kind of just creating that strain and that stress or tension around the hip joints. part of the aim as well here, right, is to, find that comfortable edge. And then the stillness or the quiet and the stillness in the holding of the pose. Four or five more breaths in the pose. Okay, and then when you're ready to come up, just gently lift your head away from your support. Use your palms to press up, and then just slide your legs out in front of you. Okay, and then our next pose, we're going to take the first side, the first direction of deer pose, what's called deer pose. Sometimes I have been taught it as sleeping deer pose. And it is a spinal twist, which we have done using a block or your bolster, and it looks a little bit like the restorative supported twist where your knees are stacked and you have your palms to either side and then you come down. But here, the legs are apart. So the front foot, sole of the front foot sits in front of the knee of the back leg. So you have your little more splayed legs akimbo, okay? And then you find just that comfortable rotation through the lower belly. And then you can come down and rest one cheek or the other cheek on your support bolster, a couple of rolled up blankets, or you could use a block, but you might be supporting yourself on your forearms there as well. Okay. Sensation in this pose, right? Largely coming from the hips, where your thigh bones meet your hip joints, and then at the turn of your hips, and then at the rotation of that lower rib cage, spine, and lumbar spine. So comfortable tension, comfortable stress around the vertebrae, around the spine, And the tops of your legs and your hips. Let's take another 4 or 5 breaths here. Guys, I'm sorry about the cat. I actually put him out because he kept coming in and out and in and out, and the air conditioning's running and it's loud. And now he's crying. Another breath or 2, and just make your way from there on your own time. And then before we go to the second side on that pose, we do a different pose. We do a lateral. It's called a lateral dragonfly. It's a side bend. Let's see if we can make some sense of it. You have to stop doing this. And a block might be handy, or your bolster might be handy for this. And it is a seated pose, so you're upright and a half straddle. Okay, so one leg is extended, and then the other knee is bent. Your other leg has a bent knee with the sole of the foot toward the inside of the thigh. And then the block can be placed right so that you could just kind of rest your elbow on it. Okay, and that can be inside the leg, be to the outside of the leg. So where do you fall? If you took a side bend, you just were going to fall to one side, where would that be for you? And then your head can just rest in your hand. Okay, so find what feels right for you there. You're just resting your head. You lean a little bit to the long leg side, and then your other arm you can rest here. So there's already, I feel a little pull up through the side, right side of my back, right side of the lower ribs. You could also do like we do with the bolster, just let your top arm come up and rest over your head. You won't hold this one quite as long. It feels a little more active than some of the other poses. If this just feels like more than you need, if this just feels like more work than you want to do, just let that one rest. But play with the block and just see what feels right for you. What feels right for you. It is a side bend. It's a lateral bend up the side of the spine. So let that feel where you land comfortably without pain. It's kind of a strain. We're looking to put a little bit of strain or stress around joints, tendons, and ligaments and fascia. If you're tight in the hips, you might also feel this kind of in this extended leg, inner thigh or groins. Let's take 5 more breaths on this side. And then up and out of the side bend and to the second side of the deer pose. Okay, so back to that reclined twist, to that supine supported twist pose. Okay, grab whatever you were using for that and do the legs opposite, sole of foot to the front of the back knee, so the legs are apart, right? And then palms to either side of your support. If you're using something long like this, you could also just come down to forearms and have a block for your hands to support your head. Okay, so the second side of the sleeping deer pose. Just be with what you feel here now on this side. Being that, given that we're all a little bit, crooked in terms of like the balance of our pelvis, or a little turn, there might be a little twist in the hips or the pelvis or the spine at some point. You might feel a different place where you're feeling the stress around the hips or the legs or the lower spines might be less intense. It might be a slightly more intense than the first side. And just be with what is and rest. You don't have to create strain if you're not really feeling much of any strain here. Another 3 or 4 breaths on this side. And then we'll go ahead and land to your head and press yourself up. And then we'll take the opposite lateral side bend from your seated position, that half straddle. So take a minute and just kind of figure out your prop and how far do you want to lean into that elbow and rest your head in your hand again. This is my tighter side, my side that feels shorter. You might want to add the extended arm, but you can play with that too if it doesn't add too much agitation, strain. It should not produce any pain. You should be able to as easily just kind of rest here with the arm extended as you would without it. So stay maybe another 3 or 4 breaths. You're comfortable here when you're ready. If you're ready when you're ready to come out, just come out and sit comfortably in an upright spine for a breath or 2. So you're ready to come from there. We're going to find child's pose for 3 or 4 minutes. We're going to just do a supported child's pose if you want support. And you can leave the support aside for now if you want to. Just feel a little bit more in your spine and your hips. And take yourself onto all fours, your big toes together. Take your hips back to your heels. Arms overhead or arms down alongside you, over the tops of your knees, around the fronts of your knees. Feel free to turn your head to one side. If your head is on the floor, by all means, use a bolster or a block to support your head if you just want your head up a little higher. Let's take 2 or 3 more breaths here in the child's pose. And when you're ready to come up from there, you're going to come onto your belly. Okay, Sphinx pose, but like a yin hold of Sphinx pose. Okay, which typically is a back bend, right? A back bend in your upper back. There's some arching more or less all the way up the spine, up the back of the spine. And you want to start, if your back is tolerant of your elbows being right under your shoulders, you're going to start there. Okay, and then have a block or a bolster so that your head can rest there. Now your forearms, you're supporting a little bit of your weight in your arms, but you're letting your chest round forward and taking this little back bend into your upper back. Bring the block a little lower. You wanted your head a little bit lower. Higher sort of feels a little more where you want to be in the shoulders and the upper back. You can always come forward with your elbows if this is too much arch. If this is too much pressure, too much arch, or discomfort or painful, go out a little bit with your elbows. And then your forehead comes to rest again. Angle that block so that the flat of the block is against my forehead. Right, so take a minute to find what feels right for you there, where you can be here for 3 minutes. With, again, a little bit of that sensation of arching in your upper back, or really in the upper back, but then continuing downward into low spine. You could put a rolled up blanket between your hip joints and the floor. If you feel like you just would prefer a little more cushion there, or a little more support at the hip joints. We're going to be here for 5 more breaths. Good. Okay, and then from there, we're gonna come on to our backs. So if you have all the support that you typically use to support reclined bound angled pose Supta Baddha Konasana, so soles of your feet together, knees wide, with some support for your head or your spine, let's do that. Okay. And any way you would like to support that. You could also, just in the interest of exploring the yin kind of style of the pose, dispense with any support underneath your knees and just let your knees kind of seek the floor with gravity, with your breath. Okay, but if you want to set up a little 3-minute, it's not as long as we would normally maybe hold this in restorative practice, but 3 minutes or so. Where we have the soles of the feet together, knees wide, but support your head, support your spine. Maybe your head is slightly elevated. And since I'm using a blanket here on my mat, my feet are gonna slide unless I take my blanket off of my mat. And then my feet can just have the mat and stay put. So normally in this pose where we have this support under the knees, we're not looking for a whole lot of sensation at the hip joints. We're looking more for the abdomen to soften, right? And for just to be kind of cradled in the pose, a comfortable opening of the knees. And we're not looking for a whole lot of intensity. In the yin pose, you are looking for that sensation. So you should feel pull, comfortable pull, very well tolerable pull at the hip joints. Let's take another 4 or 5 breaths here. So when you're ready, slide your feet down. Release your hips, release your knees, hips, legs, hip joints. And then we will come to a bridge pose, right, with some support. A bridge pose. Okay, so block or bolster. Bolster sits across your mat. And you come to lie down, right, with the bolster supporting your sacrum. Well, environmental adjustment. Okay, and so very familiar, right, from restorative practice, same exact pose. In the yin style. Same exact pose. Okay, so some of you perfectly okay, both legs extended. It doesn't bother your back. It doesn't put too much strain or kind of pain of compression in your lower spine. And take both legs long. That's a lot of intensity. Or if you're more comfortable with just the one single leg extended, start there. Just again, feel where you're feeling the pull, the sensation of that kind of strain or tension around the hip joint. You might also be feeling some lengthening of the tissues up through that hip flexor, up through the kind of the inner hip bone, abdomen up toward the lower part of your rib cage. If you have both legs extended, stay as long as your back is comfortable, up to 3 minutes, 15 breaths. I'm counting out about 15 breaths per pose or per hold. You need to come up sooner than that. You feel strain in your low spine. Come up before that. If you're in a single leg extension, take another 3 breaths and then switch. Good. If you're doing single leg, bring both feet back up to stand. Extend your other leg. And another couple of breaths here, second extended leg. And then both feet come back up to stand. So we're going to, maybe if you're using a bolster, bring your knees into your chest, push your bolster out from behind your back, and then just let your knees rest here. Turn a block and take the block out from behind you, and then hug your knees into your chest. Drop both knees to the right. Your arms go wide. Take both knees to the right, hips to the right, arms wide. One more breath this way. Your knees come back up and into center, and then go the other way with your knees. Drop your knees to one side, arms wide. Take another breath on this side. And then bring yourself back to center, and we'll take a brief shavasana, right? So maybe just a couple of minutes in shavasana to close. And whatever you have handy, reachable, you can use for support. Blanket or block to support your head, bolster to support your knees, whatever you have, it's reachable, not too much disturbance. And then just a minute or two here. And so when you're ready to begin to move, let's go ahead and come from Shavasana onto your side. Take a couple of breaths here on your side. And then use arm strength and the push of your palms to come up from your side. Close in a comfortable seated position. Palms together from your heart. Close your practice. As always, honor your time, honor this time you set aside for this kind of exploration, this intuitive mind, body, spirit, breath connection. It's always a pleasure to spend this time with you in practice. So until next week, namaste. For the rest of your evening, a wonderful weekend. Next week.